why are you specifically targeting the creative industries?
The creative industries in the UK employs 2.4 million people.
Well, there you go, you've heard it from the horse's mouth. Rachel from accounts and all of her grandiose wisdom.
Rachel from accounts.
Tax break to the film industry because it employs 2.4 million people.
Agriculture 4.
Industrial plan to get
3 for the
economy growing. Rachel, my dear, I suggest if you don't know anything about economics, you do not become the Chancellor of the Exchequer. But then again, we know that you're not going to maths, even when it involves counting on your fingers, because you can't even figure out how many months you worked in the Bank of England. But if we want to talk about industries that actually will help the economy grow, let's do that. So agriculture, 4.5 million people are employed through that sector.
So double the amount.
Yeah.
3.5 million people.
And they're taxing them more.
Construction, 2.1 million people. The film industry,
yeah, they're taxing them more.
is a luxurious industry. It is
And he's in the film industry.
Just because we are good at it does not mean that they are the ones that are deserving of a tax break. The people that are deserving of a tax break are essential sectors. Construction is essential. We need apparently 1.5 million homes, which you promised. Yet where's their tax break? The hospitality industry, the people that make living in this country actually bearable, you know, the people that serve our food, make us our drinks, provide tours around the nation's capital. Yes, we actually make life bearable, yet where is our help to help the economy grow? And then let's not forget agriculture, the people that put food on our table, beer in our glasses and clothes on our back, the people that you have been absolutely running into the ground as of late. Where's their tax break? I am sorry, but just because we are good at something does not mean that we should have a tax break on that industry.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As you've just heard from Chris's phone, we're going to probably cut a little bit at the beginning part, but we're going to play that because I wanted you to hear that from the speaker. Madness. What Rachel Reaves, the I loved how he put it, from accounting. From accounting. She's bonkers. She's off her fucking tree. Welcome to podcast 11. This is Sean. This is Chris. Thank you very much for coming back. We deeply appreciate it. I think that's a brilliant way of starting. Chris was doing a little bit of research based on Rachel Reaves' behaviour, and I think it's necessary for us to take that woman to task, because honestly, she has no fucking idea how to run our country. This man has run businesses with me. Like, he's run the accounts on businesses before me, and I don't even think he'd put her in charge of the fucking accounts in his business.
40% tax relief on a luxurious industry to start off with. What the fuck are you playing at? You should be doing that on the stuff that's actually going to help the UK.
Agriculture
or construction, since you plan to build 1.5 million homes.
We don't have the manpower for that. We don't have anywhere near the manpower for that. That's the madness.
40% tax break could turn around to be used to hire the manpower to make those homes.
It's madness. There's not enough. I mean, I'm not great in tax breaks as it is. I believe that we should have a much lower tax bracket system, as we've said before. But in reality, I think that Rachel Reaves lives in cloud cuckoo land. I don't think that woman has a Scooby-Doo about how normal people live. Would you?
Not a chance.
Would you trust her with money in your business?
Based off that, no.
Can't even work out how long she worked in the Bank of fucking England. I mean, that's disastrous. When you take into account that is our Chancellor. That is our Chancellor. Oh, just... that says everything. I mean, I don't even know where to go with that one, Chris, because, I mean, let's be fair, the gentleman's statement was justifiable. We are damaging our agricultural industry from what they're doing to the farms right now, when we should be boosting our economies. And the reason I say that is because if we don't, this is what I want to start, we need a national draft to protect Europe. If we do not protect Europe, we are going to have real financial poverty. We're talking food scarcity poverty. We do not have the farms to feed 70 million Britons today. We don't. We just...
Let alone Europe.
No. We need Europe. Europe feeds us.
Yeah.
Let's be fair about this. Europe feeds a huge amount of what we eat. Yes, we get our rice from India. There are other staples that some of the smaller parts of our population, the Indian population, the Pakistani population, the Asian population of Britain, they have a lot of rice-based material. And I don't think that will become a massive problem with involving Russia. But if Russia was to take over Europe or massively influence Europe, they hate us. we are one of the few countries that's ever beaten Russia. The United Kingdom is one of the few nations that's ever beaten the Russian Empire. There is a long-standing, multi-century feud between Britain and Russia. So I fundamentally do believe we need a draft. We need a draft. We need to bring as many men and women as we can into the British military to guarantee places like Poland, Czechoslovakia. The East is where we grow a lot of our cheap food, Chris. A fuckload of it.
I can understand the draft for security. My only concern is the mental stability of the draft.
Boots on ground. To be fair, I don't care how mentally unstable the Gen Zers are. We need them. If they want to have food security, we have to secure Europe. This isn't something about some imperialism or oil wars or shit like that. We're talking about the food scarcity of the European continent. Without Europe, Britain cannot feed her population. You will see millions of people starving. Some of the most disadvantaged and weakest parts. And that's why it's a horrible thing to say, but a national draft, I think, is inevitable. Just to bolster our numbers. To get, like a 3-year draft, just swing the British youth. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of dropouts. Yeah, we're going to be sifting through the wheat quite quickly. There's going to be a lot that we can't have, but there is going to be stuff. Like, let's be quite frank, a national draft would end all the knife crime problems we have in London. You scoop all those violent young kids off the fucking streets, you give them discipline, you give them a rifle, you tell them to defend Poland and Czech and the rest of the areas.
You basically give them legal means to kill, which I love.
Yeah, and I know that's a brutal way of answering, but the reality is...
It's just one way to
utilise
their aggression.
Yeah, and I fundamentally believe that a national draft across all tiers... none of these get outs for the fucking rich because
absolutely fucking not.
Because the rich used to be able to buy their way out.
No, there's no buyouts.
Yeah, that's.
If it's a national draft, it's across all boards.
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
You spoilt little twats up in your gold ivory towers. You get drafted, you're on the fucking front line with me, and I will kick your ass in line.
Captain Christopher, move it, you rich little shit.
There's no fucking goddamn. You want equality, you're gonna fucking get it under my rule.
Fucking tyrant here. But no, I fundamentally believe as the third military power, we need a draft to fill many of the military holes we have. We wouldn't need to do it more than once, I don't think. I think we'd need a limited draft, bolster our numbers, reinforce our food producing allies. This isn't something about oil wars, this isn't some kind of colonialism. This is
something about survival.
Yeah. We need Eastern Europe. We fucking need them as Britain. Otherwise, your food bills are going to skyrocket.
You think they're expensive now?
You literally you buy your grain, your bread. You buy shit tons from Europe. Absolute shit tons of your food comes from Europe. And the idea that Russia wouldn't influence that to damage Britain. Remember, they have a multi-century feud with Britain. We are one of the very few countries that has smacked the shit out of the Russian Empire.
Let's put this in perspective how big Russia is compared to how small we are.
And we're one of the people who have done that.
We're one of the ones, we're David, they're Goliath.
And like the Prussians, who are no longer with us, Britain was one of the few powers that has smacked the shit out of the Russians. To be fair, Britain has smacked the shit out of every power on the planet, pretty much. We are going over the last 500 years. We've picked fights with everybody, including America. But yeah, let us be very, very, very frank about this. Russia has an old enmity with Britain, and they would love to damage British political positioning, unquestionably. So for our own survival of our nation,
our own security,
and we need to reinforce Europe. This is not a question, it's a matter of survival. And this isn't some kind of, I'm really anti-colonialism in the Middle East, but if we don't safeguard the Czechs,
we don't safeguard their way of living, it's going to affect ours.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're the cheap farming and agriculture that feeds our fucking millions worth of in our cities. And I know that's harsh. That's a harsh thing to say, but it needs adult conversations. People like Rachel Reaves wouldn't know what an adult conversation was if we just slapped her. Oh, let's give tax breaks of 40% to the fucking arts. Useless. Absolutely
wrong department to give a tax relief straight off
I know,
the bat.
it's mad. Absolutely bloody barking crazy. I sometimes wonder how the hell that woman managed to get into power. But then she's a yes woman for 𝐾𝐸. She is. Let's be frank about this. 𝐾𝐸 wants yes men and yes women. He's neutered every other opponent he has in the Labour Party. He neutered them all to avoid any kind of invite. Like the radical left, they're crazy. I agree with him getting rid of those. They're off the tree. They're the people who believe in 190 agendas. Okay, him pushing them out. I have no problem with that. I'm talking about the actual leadership who genuinely want to fix the country, who could make him look bad. He's done that.
The ones that would actually challenge him on whether the decision is right or not.
Yeah. And that's.
But you would need that in a party. I'm sorry. If I was Prime Minister, I'd want.
You're a tyrant.
No.
Should yourself not. No. I know you. Do as you're told, or I'll kick you out.
I'd want obviously them to follow orders, but then I'd also to make sure that if I'm not doing something that would benefit somebody would have. You'd
make a great chancellor and a terrible prime minister. That's your problem.
Chancellor, yeah.
You would. You'd make an excellent chancellor. I would make sure the money's all looked after. But you couldn't be a prime minister because you talking to me. I'm gonna send someone to do you.
I'll be the bank book.
You have to be ruthless in money, which is fine, which you're good at, but you cannot fucking take charge of the country.
I'll be the bank book. I'll grant that. I'll definitely be the bank book.
Because I
want to send 20 billion to someone because they need help with something. Is it really worth it, or do we need to sort ourselves out first? I think ourselves out. No, they're not getting it.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's the reality is you can be ruthless enough when it comes towards money, but I don't think from a moralical point of view you'd rub a lot of people up the wrong way if you were a prime minister.
I would double down on securing our own shit
which is fine. When you start, you need to get that. You need to do things in phases, and I don't think 𝐾𝐸 has phased his problems enough. But yeah, I genuinely do believe we need a national draft to protect Europe in the United Kingdom. Not a vast one that can put about 500,000 soldiers in our facilities.
That ain't much.
No, I know.
With our population, that ain't much at all.
We need about 500,000 recruited, and we're not going to keep that 500,000. I kid you not. What will happen is you'll whittle them down. 150, 200,000 will go out the door because they're just not capable of doing the job. You do a 500,000 draft. You get about 300,000 of them back. And you then train them to fill all the facilities you need across the British militaries. And that would guarantee the safety. Russia's military is collapsing. Even though Russia's winning, because they have this brutal warfare, they're throwing tens of thousands of people. It's human wave warfare, it's horrible. But they're winning because of the attrition of bodies. And it does work. It's brutal, it's savage, but it works. And I'm not discrediting the Russians for that, because it is a tactic. It's a brutal tactic, but it's a tactic.
It's an effective tactic.
It's an effective tactic as well. But the problem being is that this is going to damage Russia population-wise later, because this is their young male population. These are the people that are supposed to be the fathers of their next generation. It's going to do some serious damage, and that's why Europe has to have far more high tech. If Europe comes into a physical conflict with Russia, Russia's going to lose. If they're slowing down by supported Ukraine, whose soldiers are, let's face it, second rate. If facing,
so then they're not what we'd call our standard.
No. But Britain is a commando nation. We are a nation of specialists. We always have been. We have been for more than 50, 60 years. We stick that next to the French and Polish armies. The fucking Russians are gone. I'm going to say it what it is. Because we'll take out all the strategic back targets.
I was going to say, it'll literally be Poland, France, literally taking on the main bulk of the infantry unit. Then just sweeping in behind, just going, I'll take out the entire command force, bang, it's
tanks,
gone.
Vehicles, drones, tanks, the fucking works. The British are specialists, they always have been, especially for the last 50 years when it comes to ground army. Our Navy's still pretty sizable and achievable.
Our Royal Marines would wipe the floor.
We don't have enough of them. And again, that comes to the human wave problem. We've never had enough of them to do a straight up battle. That's why we need the draft.
Yeah, but they're not designed for straight up battle. They're designed to go in, just eliminate.
But if you're in human wave warfare, there is a certain level of that you can ignore.
Yeah,
that's the problem. The beautiful thing about the Royal Marines and the SAS and all the specialists that we have is they're great for taking out things. But if you're in human wave warfare, it's a lot harder than you think it is.
Numbers.
You need numbers, and that's why a draft is absolutely necessary.
You'd be good on the front line.
I'd be a psychopath. You think you're scary Russian? I come from fucking London.
You don't want that to be a case if you run through lines, you'd see me just sat at the top of you with the minigun or the sniper rifle just popping off the leftovers you don't get.
Captain, why is he using a shovel? It hurts more. Because that would be the kind of John's got his shovel, the Russians are done.
Give him a machete, it's over faster.
To be fair, when I was chefing, I had a Gurkha, an ex-Gurkha military chef. Oh my God, those blades are unbelievable. I've seen that man bone an entire pig with a Gurkha knife.
I'm not giving you a Gurkha knife.
Bro, literally just. I was just I didn't touch it, per se, but I was watching him. He boned a pig, top to bottom, with a Gurkha knife. I'm like, oh my God, that's scary. So, Israel has indefinitely delayed Palestinian prisoners' release as hostages are freed. I'm sorry, but when you make an agreement, a peace agreement, you stick to it. This is from the BBC, so take of it as you will. Benjamin Netanyahu, the regurgitated pond scum that he is, has said the release was now going to be delayed until the next handover of hostages by Hamas was guaranteed, and without what the Israeli Prime Minister called the degrading ceremony Hamas has put on each week. His comments come after 6 Israeli hostages, including 4 kidnapped during the 7th of October 2023 deadly Hamas attack on Israel, were released on Saturday. Only one more handover of hostages is due in the first phase of the ceasefire, which involves 4 who have died in captivity. Now, the reason I have a problem with the BBC is how incredibly pro-Israeli they use their language. You see, they call it the deadly attack of Hamas on October the 7th, ignoring the Nakbas, ignoring the fact that there have been ethnic cleanses, ignoring the villages that have been wiped out for the last 50 years by the Israelis. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's the way that the BBC horrifically mangles language that I object to. Yes, Hamas is putting a bit of a show on, because obviously they've kept these people alive for much of this conflict, and now that they're getting out, there's massive things on social media of an Israeli kissing a Hamas soldier on the forehead, and Israeli stitch. And it's driven the fucking Israelis and the Americans crazy because of how incredibly civilized the Hamas are. Where the Israelis are imprisoning hundreds, thousands of Palestinians, many of them children. This is one of those conversations that people are not having. Israel bangs up, collectively punishes women, children for a conflict between them and Hamas. Now, I'm not even a supporter of Hamas. I want to be very, very clear. I'm not a supporter of Hamas.
But why are they
banging up women and children? Why are they shooting women and children? These are reports from the BBC, from the media outlets, that they're shooting babies, pregnant women. That's what the Israeli Defence Force does.
If that ain't genocide, I don't know what is.
And that's why entire sections of the young generation are calling it genocide. It's an ethnic cleanse. And then we've got that muppet in charge of America talking about taking over Gaza. No one's going to buy that. No one. The fact that Benjamin Netanyahu thinks that he can disregard a peace agreement that was settled for the sole purpose because he doesn't like the way that Hamas are letting people go. This peace agreement, when it dies, when Israel violates this peace agreement, and they're going to violate it, because that's just how Israel operates. Israel has always fouled any agreement they've made with the freedom fighters, the strugglers inside of Palestine. They've almost never upheld any of their agreements, and this is the problem. And then the Western media ignores it. They ignore the fact that Israel breaches these pieces all the time. These treaties are barely worth the paper they're written on. And to coin a phrase from what I've heard on social media recently, they've stopped attacking Gaza, which is a fantastic thing because they've flattened it into a car park. They're now attacking West Bank, the other side of the Palestinians. They're now ejecting people from camps in the West Bank on their homelands. And there's no historical declaration otherwise, Chris. The indigenous people are the Palestinians. The Palestinians have been there 500 years, mate. It's like you, an Anglo-Saxon man, me, an Irishman, coming back after 2,000 years and telling you to get the fuck off my island?
I'm going to tell you to fuck off.
Of course. But hypothetically speaking, me as an Irishman, I do have a claim, anciently speaking, to the whole British Isles.
But then I'll turn around and go, if you want to come back, that's fine, you're welcome, come be my neighbour.
That's what the Palestinians did.
Yeah.
Back in the 1930s and 40s, the Palestinians brought them in, Chris.
That's understandable. Okay,
the Palestinians brought them in and said, no, come back.
You got equal ties, that's fine.
They then look up the Nakbas, where they took over the homes and the schools, and they literally threw the Palestinians out of their own homes. It's disgusting. So that's what I'm trying to explain. It's like me returning after 2,000 years as an Irishman, telling an Anglo-Saxon who's been here, give or take 500-600 years, get off my island. But you've been here six centuries.
It's 6 generations plus.
No, it's more than that. A generation's about 90 years. It's like probably about 8 or 9. It's mad. It's absolutely mad. The very conceptual position is mad. To be fair, no, actually, I think it's longer than that. I think the Anglo-Saxons have been here about 1,000 years. Anglo-Saxons.
The Israelis are just showing the fact that purely
They're a group of German people who settled Britain after the fall of the Roman Empire. My apologies, more than 1,000 years. The Anglo-Saxon period was from 410 to 1066 AD. And to be fair, most white English Britons, you're Anglo-Saxon descended. For the bulk of you. Some of you have got other bits and pieces in you, obviously. But for the bulk of you, the whole chunk of much...
It could be drawn back to that.
Your main tribe is your Germanic ancestry of the Anglo-Saxon ruling class of England until the Normans conquered the Britain in 1066. But it would be like us Celts, unless 2,500 years ago, we did rule all the isles. The Icenians, the other tribes of Celts that lived across Britain during the Roman period. Who were they? Latin Britain. You see, the Romans didn't even control that much of Britain. That's what people don't like actually admitting. The Romans didn't even control that much of Britain during that period. They controlled the important strategical ports, and the rest of the island they left to the indigenous people. Like they would have their fortified towns in cities.
Yeah.
They would have their strongholds, and then what went on in the countryside they didn't give a shit about.
It's basically saying we just need this bit, this bit, and this bit. And
that was the nature of the Roman Empire.
Carry on as you want to.
Yeah, that was literally.
That's what I call living in harmony. We just only want this bit.
No. The Romans never lived in harmony with anybody. No. They wanted something, they took it.
Apart from the vicious part from them taking it, that's the fact that they only wanted a certain part just to do their own thing and then leaving the rest.
Genuinely speaking, if the Romans wanted something, the Romans would just take. If they wanted more slaves, they would go out in the countryside and take them. That was just the nature of who the fuck they were.
And the Romans just had what they wanted.
It was the Roman Empire. That was literally the nature of it. But yeah, in essence, in an indigenical point of view, an Irishman coming back after 2,000 years of admittedly being diaspora, telling the native Anglo-Saxons, you have to get off this island, I want it back, God promised it to me, is fucking absurd. And I'm using the Irish to English connotation because much of our podcast viewers, because that's the cruxus of the Palestinians who have been there for 500 years, maybe 6. And yet the diaspora of the Jewish community have been away for thousands. They were expelled by Romans, they were expelled by Babylonians, they were expelled by the Egyptians. The Jewish diaspora.
So many civilizations have
existed. See, this is one of those things. What does the Romans, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Egyptians and the Greeks all have in common? They've all expelled the Jews. Why?
That's a very good question.
And I think it comes down to their xenophobic ethno-nationalism. And it's a horrible thing to say, but the Jewish ethno-state is a centric point of modern and Babylonian Talmudian religious beliefs. That they do not want to live with anyone else. And all those empires I mentioned are all multiracial, multi-religious.
Like I say, yeah, they've had multiple cultures.
Multiple races, cultures, religions. We conquered you, yeah, you can keep your faith, here's my flag. I'll take 2 of your sons, you can go back to your business. That was most of those empires. That was pretty much a good description, even the Romans. But let's be quite frank, historically the Jews were not great at integrating. They did not like working for...
That says to me that they need to do some self-realisation and actually...
Chris, for 2,000 years, you think they're going to do it now?
But then, based on everything they're currently doing, they're not.
Just like I said, just look at how they behaved with the ancient empires. It's a stark reality when you historically look at how the Jews were expelled multiple times, and the question is why? Why were they expelled? What did all of these empires? Many of them had no contact with each other. The Babylonians didn't know the Romans.
No, they didn't. No, that's a good point. The fact that
the Babylonians had nothing to do with the Romans.
Two separate civilizations evicted the Jews and didn't have contact with each other, which means there must be something wrong there. But still, regardless of what, Israel, you need to honour your peace treaty. It's time to actually...
Yeah, absolutely.
It's what 𝐸ZA call time to put on your big boy shoes and act like an adult instead of throwing your toys out the pram because you're not getting what you want.
That's asking for a question. So they were expelled by the Babylonians in 586. They were exiled by Rome in 139 BCE. This is all BCE. Expelled from Egypt. Expelled from Iran in 1979 to 80. All of these countries, remember, Babylon and Rome would have had almost no physical contact with each other. Babylon collapsed because of the Greeks, and the Greeks collapsed because of the Romans. So yes, the Romans would have heard of the Babylonians, but they never had any direct interest.
They would have known of them, but they wouldn't have interacted with them.
Yeah, because the Greeks had already stuffed over with Alexander the Great. The Babylonians in terms of exiles. So why do the Babylonians, the Romans, the Egyptians all share a common theme of expelling the Jews? The only answer is these are all multiracial, multi-religious, multi-cultured empires. If you wish to have a xenophobic ethno-nationalism, you are going to rub powerful empires, powerful, culturally diverse empires up the wrong way. And that's where we come to it. And when it comes to peace agreements, because we've got Donald Trump in power right now, I don't think Israel will honour its peace agreements. It won't. That man has given them a blank cheque, and it's...
Right. It's plain and simple. If Israel doesn't honour their peace agreement, it will just show their true side to the rest of the world, and then they'll immediately get shunned by everybody.
Chris, they're almost a pariah state as it is. Yeah. The European politicians are only just holding on to them. They're only just holding... Like, the European politicians are the only class. The European people want rid of Israel. Because the boycotts are everywhere. Universities are in fucking stand-ups. The entire next generation wants done. They want to treat the Israelis like the apartheid South Africans. For Israel to survive, in my honest opinion, as a nation, it has to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. It has to get rid of his political elite. It has to give up Greater Israel. It has to. For them to survive as a nation, if they don't give up these points, I genuinely believe that Europe and America will continue to drift apart because of Donald Trump, at which point, why are the European politicians taking political hits from their population, because we're a democracy?
Yeah.
These are all democratic stations that are liberal and democratic by their nature. Why are they taking political backlash from their public when they've got the radical right wing on one side of them? They do not need to be protecting Israel from this.
They'll boot them straight out. That'll be another empire which will kick them out.
Once Europe has ended trade agreements and embargoed Israel, Israel's dead. Israel cannot survive without Europe. I do not think the Americans understand that. The European powers cut ties with Israel. Israel is a corpse. It won't be able to feed itself. It won't be able to supply any of its equipment. It won't be able to get any of its... Remember, the bases in Europe, the American bases in Europe, are the bases that are supplying Israel its weapons.
And if they turn around and...
So if America pulls out, because America's talking about pulling out of Europe, if America pulls out of Europe, Israel's fucked. Israel is absolutely fucked. Now, you can buy politicians for only so much, but eventually you will have a backlash, whether it's from the far right, the far left, something will snap.
From one side or the other, it's going to snap, and they'll have to answer, which will then just push the radius out.
In relation to my belief we need a national draft comes to the nasty reality that there is currently very unsafe to be a woman in the British military. Royal Artillery gunner 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 was found dead in her barracks at Lancaster Camp in Wisconsin on the 15th of December 2021 after a Christmas party. On Thursday, a coroner ruled that the army had contributed to the gunner Beck's death by failing to take actions after she was harassed by her line manager and sexually assaulted by other colleagues.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Seriously?
This is a standard. There is a systemic fucking problem of sexual harassment in the British military, and we need to call that what it is. There is a sexual harassment inside the British military. There is a massive problem in it. 1 in every 10 armed forces personnel have experienced intimate partner violence and abuse in that terminology.
Hang on, I thought obviously if women enrolled, they had their own separate barracks and everything else.
They do.
And I thought
Chris, that doesn't necessarily mean that system works.
That means there's an error somewhere.
Oh yeah. The error is called that most of the officers don't care. That's the fun. There is a systemic level of failure in the British Armed Forces, low-ranking officers, from NCOs to lieutenants, of not giving a fuck.
That's a lack of discipline.
No, the discipline when it comes to military matters, but. There is a culture of mistreatment of women in the British Armed Forces, and it needs to be stamped on. It needs to be stamped on heavily. New research from the King's Centre for Military Health and Research at King's College London has found that the Armed Forces personnel are significantly more likely to both experience and perpetrate intimate partner violence and abuse, IPVA, than the wider civilian population. The study is from 2022. We know of this problem for decades. The UK Armed Forces needs to get a grip with itself. We have known about these armed force problems for absolute decades. There were abuse going on when I was a cadet 30 years ago. Okay? When I was a cadet, this shit was going on. 3 decades ago. I don't buy this is all new stuff. It's not. It's a continuation of the same problems of where, as I said, from senior NCOs to lieutenants are just not being punished enough to disincentivize these problems. Because the middle management officers, the captains, majors, and lieutenant colonels, don't want the problem. The NCOs to lieutenants don't care. And the upper bosses are all saying, oh no, we have programs, we have facilities, we've solved this problem. No, they haven't. You see, there's layers of denial, and you just need someone like a Prime Minister to say, you fix this or I'm sacking you, General. You fix this or I'm sacking you, Colonel. You will lose your fucking pension. I will throw you out the fucking military. I don't care how many decades you got. You will start to fix this. You need a Prime Minister just to sit down and say, you fix this or you're out of a job. And I promise you, once the generals realise that the Prime Minister's got a foot straight up their fucking arse, the generals will fix it. Because they'll come down like a 10-ton of bricks on the majors and the captains will have to do it downwards. Because the acute pressure will come when you apply the political pressure. But there is realistically no desire in the military or the military culture to fix these problems. And it is a cultural problem. It's a massive military cultural problem. And it's not spoken about enough. And I think that's disgusting. I think the British people need to perceive that we have a serious problem in our military and its inability to resolve.
See, this is what I don't get. Whoever wants to join, obviously, the military service and uphold the defence of the country, I support you 100%, whether you're male or female, yeah? But then I also turn around and expect that your fellow colleagues, regardless on what station from bottom to top, treat you all with respect. Because as far as I was concerned, that's what you got in the military. Because you've...
In theory, yes. And on paper, let's be fair about this. On paper, yes.
Yeah.
The generals have fixed this on paper.
But actually,
enforcement is our problem.
Yeah.
And that's where we're standing. It's the policies there. The policies there, absolutely. No one is enforcing these problems. No one is punishing these bullying tactics, these problems that are going on in the military. We've got literally a dead fucking teenage girl.
That's absolutely disgusting.
Absolutely disgusting.
A fellow comrade which could turn around and potentially save your life if you go into war, you just turn around and murdered because of the fact you didn't like the fact that she joined the army. You're a fucking moron.
I don't know who is responsible for the bullying of her, and that's the thing. The BBC doesn't even mention the investigation. And that's the thing that bothers me, is how little information we know about this problem and how it hasn't been investigated. Because it's not in any part of the public press. None whatsoever. We don't know who's responsible for the Royal Artillerists' death in terms of the bullying and that lot. We don't have a clue if there's an investigation going on. That's the problem. It's how much secrecy sits around this problem, and we need to dispense that secrecy. We really do. Yeah, I mean, for me, the whole pronupsis of what has happened to this beautiful young lady, prime of her life, 19 years of age, a stuff for a lar is the only thing I can say. A waste of human life, absolute waste. The state of the UK economy is doomed unless a real shake-up is how we think about the UK economy is taken on board. Gold has doubled in the last decade in price. Gold has physically doubled in its price.
Good thing to invest in if any of you want to make
money. Good. Gold is very good for those. I've got
long-term investment mine, not sure.
Yeah, definitely. But gold itself has not changed. What has changed is the ability of the wealthy to be able to buy more. This has compounded the value of such precious metals. Housing will follow. Likewise, unless we build our way out of the UK's problems, we can't keep running our society by the old standards of inflation and maintaining the good old days. Those days are dead. The idea of boom and bust inflation system is gone, because Britons are not spending money anymore.
It needs to be equal.
The common people who spend their way out of these problems. This is one of the points that the British. I've been watching a lot of economists speaking specifically about how the economy tends to be built on Britain's being able to spend. The common family doesn't have any spending cash.
Not anymore.
They have survival cash to make money to pay the bills, etc., to keep our shit together. But we do not have spending cash, and this is why the boom and bust idea of the good old days just doesn't wash anymore. We realistically have to build our way out of these problems. We have to build more houses, more schools. This is what I genuinely believe we need to build more cities. I genuinely do. I think we need to. Even if I'm pipe dreaming, let's say 10 cities, like I've said before, is too much. I've been told by many people you're expecting too much to build 10 cities.
Even 2, 3 would.
2 or 3 would rapidly change Britain's economy.
Surely that's doable. 2, 3 cities.
It's just the building projects across the UK. We need new towns, new villages. We especially need a new city. At least 2 or 3 of them are. I would like to say we could build 10, and that would boom Britain. We'd become a fucking seizable medium power again. It would allow us to lower all of our congestions, our population problems, our housing problems. If we built even 2 or 3 cities, it would rapidly improve Britain's economy and society.
I reckon we could easily build 2, 3 cities within 20, 30 years.
We need to make a very clear indication that we can't carry the tax burden of Britain on the shoulders of working class people.
It's not just tax, it's inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation
but the country is carried by the taxes of the bulk of the population. We are not carrying the taxes of our society on the actual mega rich. The financial sectors of Britain have the most favourable tax systems in the UK, and that has to end. That genuinely has to end. I don't care how much they donate to parties. They are using our facilities, our bandwidth, our electricity, our infrastructure, our everything else, and yet they pay less tax than some cleaning companies.
It literally does need to, as you suggest, just tax reform system, ideally 2-tier.
Yeah.
And
a 2-tier system would work.
And for at least, I would say, minimum of 5 years, put a cap on inflation. Because if you want Brits to have spending money, that national living wage needs to raise and almost be just under inflation.
I don't necessarily think we need to raise the minimum wage. What we need to do is remove the burden of the tax on the British people, on the common people. And you do that by shifting the burden back to the corporate. Because France does it. Germany does it. Yeah, their economies are stagnating at the moment because they're cut off from Russian resources, because there's a fucking continental conflict going on. But relatively speaking, the burden of taxation sits in the corporate hand, not the public hand. This is why Europe has a better way of life than we do at the moment. And it's a brutal thing to say, but they do. They generally do have a better lifestyle than we do, better life
And that's
standards.
the reason why the price of food here to there is the same.
No, it's fucked. We pay far more. Since we left the single market, we pay another 40% on our food, mate.
No, I mean like conversion rate. If you convert pounds to euro, it's not much difference.
Yeah. But that's because of the problems going on in the East. But if you're talking about food costs, God no, we pay a lot more.
You could get a lot more value for food over there than what you do here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolute truckloads.
Because again, we've left the single market, and I stand by this previous statement, and I know it's quite controversial to echo the one and only Donald bloody Trump, but in 2016 we left Europe. Are you richer or poorer now, Britain?
Worse.
Since 2016 to now, has immigration come up or gone down?
It's gone up.
Why did we leave Europe?
To reduce the immigration, which
failed. So we've done self-harm financially. We've harmed ourselves.
We would have took the hit if immigration was controlled, but it has not. The government have completely failed.
The Tories have failed, the Labour Party, none of them can solve these problems because you can't solve them without having agreements with the rest of Europe.
Yeah.
You can't solve these migration problems without sitting down with the Europeans to fix
I know for a fact if we actually turned around and actually done a proper deal with Europe and said, look, we want to stand on our own, because the fact we need to focus on ourselves, we need proper immigration policy. Most of Europe would turn around, okay, you're sorting yourself out so you can then better everything else off in the future. Most of them would turn around and go, yeah, no problem, set up a proper immigration policy.
But that's the problem, we don't have immigration policies. You can't claim asylum outside of the UK now. You can't claim it in Calais. You can't claim it in Greece. You can't come to a UK embassy or immigration centre, which was a massive mistake, because if they'd failed their immigration requests in Greece or in Calais, they wouldn't be illegally floating around the UK. They'd be looking for other places to find immigration. You see, this is the problem. We don't have any sitting agreement. The Tories pulled out and Labour hasn't fixed any of this fence.
They didn't sort it out correctly. As I call it, they didn't dot the I's and cross the T's to make sure everything was working correctly.
Of course not.
Instead, they just went, fuck it, and just fucked off and didn't do anything.
Absolutely. They pulled out, put their head in the sand, and since 2016, we are poorer and immigration hasn't been resolved. The self-inflicted wound that many of those Brit-Exiters said, oh, we don't care about the economy, we want to get our migration dealt with. Well, your economy is now in the dog pan, as me and Chris have lived through most of this, and your immigration has not gone down. And Nigel Farage will offer you no further changes. He is a simple, normal neocon politician, liberal neocon. He will not change the model apparatus of what the Conservatives, he might be a little bit more right-wing than the Conservatives, but he will not change the apparatus of what they're doing. Because he knows he can't really, pulling out the human rights agreement isn't going to solve these problems. The British courts will not let you deport tens of thousands of people to Rwanda. Okay, they're just not going to do it. Forget the human rights courts, the British courts will not let you send these people to Rwanda. Because the most civic thing you could do, if you wish to return these migrants, is send them to France. Send them back to Germany. Because they're the next safest, clean, civil countries. It's a brutal thing to say, but it is true.
But in order to do that, you need a proper...
You need a fucking agreement.
You need a proper policy agreement with those countries in order to make sure that if we do take some, but then France or Germany take some as well, so it's not all right on us. Instead, the other two are just going, well, we're not going to take you. We know you can turn around, float across the boat and get into UK for no issue.
And this is where the fundamental, these asylum seekers are trying for a better life. Many of them are economical migrants. I'm not necessarily saying that we should keep economical migrants, but we have an international obligation to actual refugees. And I say this to the nationalists, for any of them who ever watch our podcast, I doubt it.
I'd like you to watch our podcast, because then you can spread all this information to your fellow people. That's probably because I don't want hits, but there you go.
But sufficient to say that the bulk of our industries do not require cheap labour anymore. We have no need for cheap labour. We need to worry about the labour of our children and our grandchildren. And and that's not a white person thing. I'm in no way talking about that as a white person. I'm Muslim, so I'm worried about third generation Britons, Muslims, having jobs and things. We need to stop this cheap labour migration approach. It does not work.
If anything, if I remember correctly, it's a cheap labour import which is keeping our wages down.
That again.
There's a thought for you people. The consistent need for cheap labour is keeping the rest of us, which is struggling, our wages are staying low because of the fact they can find cheap labour everywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
We eliminate that and make sure that whoever has a job is paid fairly.
And again,
yeah,
it comes with the tax burden. If we eliminate the large sections of the tax burdens, we'll put more money back in the British people's pockets. You don't need to raise the minimum wage, because what happens is that the cost, living cost, goes up with it. When minimum wage goes up, the companies don't care. They just build.
I've noticed it with the latest one actually, because obviously everyone's wages going up this year, but then
all the costs have gone up.
Council tax has gone up, water has gone up, electric's gone up, gas has gone up, food's gone up. So regardless how much you try to live it, increase that wage, the companies just pass the cost on back to us, and
that's why the burden. That's why the burden of tax needs to be smoothed. This is why we need to streamline the tax system in its entirety. And I stand irrevocably by that. But the British national economy needs to be fixed. We need a
tax
massive
system needs to be fixed.
Tax system definitely, but we need to build our way out of this country. We need actual people willing to stand up and start fixing the UK's physical infrastructure. And we need to acknowledge that the Green Belt will not survive. Okay, because it's ludicrous that we're holding to these 1990 policies on environmentalism.
As we said in
on
the
an
previous
island that only on our previous podcast, an island that only 8% that we own, that we occupy.
Yeah, we only take up such a small amount. The fact that we can turn around and increase that, even by like 2-4%, will better off everybody in the long run. Yes, we need to preserve our nature and everything else, but then that's where you need to use your brain and actually
get good planners
and plan stuff.
But there is you could comfortably set. I mean, even if my pipe dream of 10 doesn't come around 10 cities, even if you do 3, you could fit 3 cities in Britain nicely
and still have
fuckloads of land and territory,
still have the nature,
houses,
everything.
And the way you get around the way you get around the shortage of skilled staff, again. You take all of the failed college goers, the kids who aren't going to university, and you give them apprenticeships. You bring, relatively speaking,
bring them into construction on apprenticeships of a certain skill.
You bring professional German engineers in, French and German engineers, to teach British companies how to build German and French infrastructural positions. And then what you do is you then morph. You have these skilled European engineers teaching Britons building skills. The building skills, we have apprenticeships for the other building skills. We make it incentivised for the companies, the construction companies, to have apprentices. We make it financially viable for these teenagers to go into these fields. We then build cities. We build towns, we build villages, we build houses. That 1.5 million that the Labour Party said they're going to get to, they can't do it until they start solving some of the background problems that we have generated for decades. Remember, we had 14 years of the Tories that refused to do anything that the market wouldn't allow them to. Market-based society does not work. It has not worked. It has only enriched the ultra-rich and damaged the fabric of British society. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has warned Donald Trump against surrender of the Ukraine, as the US president said Russia's leader Vladimir Putin wants to make a deal. This could include European peacekeepers. The transatlantic rift over the World War was apparent on Monday as Trump and Macron, the first European leader to visit the White House since Trump regained power, disagreed over aid and efforts to secure the lasting peace in Ukraine. The meeting was cordial, at times even warm, but came just hours after the US vetoed against the United Nations resolution drafted by Ukraine and the European Union condemning Russia for its invasion. You see, America is retreating from any form of peacekeeping role, relatively speaking. They're going to leave Europe. I'm under no illusions about this. They're going to leave Europe. It's not if, it's when. People like Trump and his form of neocons do not consider a future of resource, trade, everything else in Britain and Europe, and we need to look after ourselves. It's a brutal reality, and the Ukrainian war is dominating everything. And I mean, this is the third bloody podcast we're talking about it. But the problem being is it is front news. It does directly affect us. Ukraine used to be one of the breadbaskets of Europe, feeding everybody. That's the crazy thing.
Could that be the reason why Russia's trying to take it? Because they want to be the breadbasket?
No. Russia wants to take it for many reasons. Resources, minerals. They don't like the fact that NATO's on their border, which I get. I
can understand the NATO.
Ukraine cannot join NATO, in my opinion. I fundamentally stand by that. Ukraine cannot join NATO. Ukraine needs to remain neutral. We're probably going to have to accept the fact that the Crimea and one of the provinces of Ukraine is going to Russia. That's a brutal fucking thing. It's probably going to happen that way for a secured peace. Zelensky's probably going to have to go. And I don't know how much in there. See, that's the variables that President Trump has mentioned and the Russians have mentioned. And I don't know how much Europe's going to give on that. You see, this is where I think the dividing line could happen. Macron has said that, yes, a peace agreement can be achieved, but it can't be through the surrender of Ukraine's sovereignty. And that is a fundamental problem because Trump has a problem with having to pour billions and billions and billions into the Ukraine for a war he absolutely disagreed with. And he admits that NATO should not have been made. I fundamentally believe that the Russian deal with America is going to be bad for Europe. Fundamentally, he just does not give a shit. Trump has not cared about Europe much of his career. He mildly cares about Britain because his mother's Scottish. So there's a very personal reason behind that.
Yeah.
Outside of that, he doesn't give a damn about the rest of Europe. He really doesn't. And I think realistically we need to acknowledge that America is withdrawing from its defensive measures in the European Union. And if a deal is made, it's going to be the detriment of Europe. Ukraine is probably going to lose. They've lost the Crimea already. They're probably going to lose the Donbass, an entire region, entire industrial region.
Obviously, apart from mostly NATO being on his border, I can understand them not being happy with it.
Absolutely, and we should never have done that.
Yeah, if he wanted resources and everything else, why didn't he just strike up a conversation with them and then develop and do a trade agreement?
The problem being is Zelensky's election comes on the back of what? Do you know much? What do you know about the previous president of Ukraine?
Nothing.
Yeah, that's the thing. He was a duly elected president. He was democratically elected.
Yeah.
The problem being is he was too pro-Russian, and the CIA basically removed him. Let's call it what it is. The CIA physically removed him. Zelensky's predecessor.
But wouldn't you need someone on the border of Russia to be slightly more favourable to Russians to keep the neutrality of the country?
Viktor Yugovich is a Ukrainian and a Russian politician who served as the fourth president of Ukraine in 10 to 2024. He also served as the Prime Minister of Ukraine several times between 2021 and 2027 and was a member of the Verkhovna Rada Parliament. Basically, he basically got thrown out of his office by spies. The CIA basically had him oifed. They kicked him out.
Is that because they didn't like the fact that the Ukraine was basically being controlled by someone that was?
Well, to be fair, Ukraine was heavily like you had the orange elections prior to that.
Yeah.
And there was a female politician. I can't remember her name. She was very popular. She was very popular in Europe as well back in the 2007s. 2000s and 2005, 2007 kind of area. She was very popular, and the president and even the prime minister, this woman, they were still relatively friendly with Vladimir Putin, who's been a president for an enormous amount of time. You got to understand, he's been there for fucking decades.
He's been there a while.
Yeah, since the 90s, I think he's been in charge of it. He was prime minister, and then he became.
I'd say he's the only one that I've known that's actually been in control of Russia. For most of my life.
Yeah, Yeltsin and Boris Yeltsin. They were when we were kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, he lost power. It was a coup. Let's call what happened in his presidency a coup, because he was thrown out. There were multiple riots, multiple protests. The 𝐬𝐿 protests, they call it. They weren't protests. Let's get to the root of what the Ukrainian war is based upon. The CIA, on orders of the neocons of the Democratic Party, relatively speaking, and many of those in Europe who wanted access to the Ukrainian resources and to put NATO bases on the border of Russia, which was a game for them, it really was. The 𝐬𝐿 protests were organised, engineered and done by the CIA and the American Intelligence Committee. And let's just call it what it is.
A power grab.
Yeah.
That's
it was a power grab.
Literally, Ukraine's become power grab.
And
so instead of remaining the neutral party, which literally just provided resources to everyone, if everyone approached the table with a trade agreement, which I'm sure Ukraine would have turned around and just gone, yeah, that's fine, because in fact we're injecting money into our economy, it's helping your economy, everyone's living peacefully. But no, people are getting power hungry and stupid.
You see, yes, he had things like the Baccarat, which were a group of armed secret police who served the president. I'm not saying that the previous president, Zelensky, was a good man. Let's not kid ourselves here. He was a Russian stooge, let's call it what it is. But he wasn't. But he was lawfully elected. And he basically, on Friday the 21st of February in 2014, 𝐽𝐿 and the leaders of the parliamentary oppositions signed an agreement to bring about the interim unity government, including the opposition, reinstating the constitution of 2004 and early elections before December of the late. That day, the Ukrainian parliament voted 386-0 to reinstate the 2004 constitution of Ukraine. During the afternoon, the police abandoned central Kiev, allowing protesters to take control. Yukov secretly fled the city, that eventually, without signing the measure that would reinstate the 2004 constitution, he agreed to ratify it in an EU-brokered agreement. So basically, he fucked around with his own economy. He was messing around, but he was thrown out by the 𝐬𝐿 election protest. Who backed those NGOs? Who paid for those NGOs? The CIA. It's not rocket science. The NGOs backed the 𝐬𝐿s. The NGOs are paid for by the Central Intelligence. The Americans have always wanted access to the resources of Ukraine. Being friends of America is fucking dangerous. Being enemies is dangerous. Being friends of them, unless you're an old ally, is very, very dangerous. America is predatorial at nature when it comes to resources and material.
Aren't we an old ally of America?
We've had conflicts.
We've had conflicts.
We've had conflicts, quite like the Falklands. Do you remember the Falklands when you were younger?
Barely.
The Americans refused to sell us missiles to defend our property in the Falklands against the Argentinians. Like there were American senators blocking weapons shipments to a NATO ally who had been unlawfully attacked. And we were told, even when the Falklands were invaded, we weren't allowed to call for Article 5. Because it wasn't our core territories.
Fuck off.
That's... I'm not kidding you. America's history for decades has been predatorial, even amongst her allies. Even amongst her allies. It can be horrifying when you look at how personally intricate that America is. And Trump is the end result of that. He is the deal maker, the predator at the head of what is America's a democracy, I'm sorry. It holds the trappings of a democracy. But it tends to look more like a corporate entity that consumes anything it can get its hands on.
I've seen this within my lifetime. Every time there's been a struggle over resources, it's because America started it.
Yeah. America has been involved in almost... America has more bases than the British did during the Empire.
I can understand wanting to obviously get resources, obviously to help sustain and feed your people. But why can't they do like what the rest of us do and set up trade agreements and everything else?
750 full military bases in more than 80 countries. 750 military bases in more than 80 countries. It has double the amount of overseas bases that the British Empire had.
And for what reason?
Oh, it's entirely based upon any more bases than any other country in history. The US became the global peacekeeper after World War II, which is one reason why it has so many bases. This is not the entire. The US has had these bases because it has a protection racket. The US offers protection in exchange for access to your markets and your raw resources, and you get to say yes, sir. And that's the reality of it. Unless you're a nuclear armed power, let's be fair. When North Korea became nuclear, she was able to tell America to fuck off. When we all know that North Korea was on the cards for being whacked over.
Actually, I do remember that North Korea was on the cards of...
They were talking about invading North Korea for South Korea for unification, knowing that China would have been irritated.
But the moment...
He got nukes, it was all over. No one was fucking around.
As soon as they got nukes hit, America's like, shit, no, fuck no.
Because nukes would have damaged Japan and would have damaged America's very... It doesn't matter if North Korea would die. North Korea would die in a nuclear exchange between them and America. Let's be fair about that, they'd be annihilated. But the damage that North Korea could do is not worth the return.
They could do a lot of damage
with
nukes.
I think they've probably got a dozen or 2 dozen nukes, but they can kill Japan. They could kill Philippines. They could absolutely fucking annihilate South Korea in nuclear weapons. Ignoring the fact that they theoretically might have missiles that can reach America, we don't care about that, and the Americans would obliterate them. The Chinese would probably kill them, kill their leaders to stop a nuclear war, because the refugees of all the North Koreans would come into China. We know that. That's the common sense thing that the Chinese would do Kim over himself, because they want to save themselves from all the fucking refugees they've got to deal with. But the reality sits very, very clearly. Ever since North Korea's had nukes, no one's talked about invading North Korea.
Because it would cause the damage they could cause.
And this is why I fundamentally believe that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, we are going to see a nuclear war in the Middle East. Because Israel cannot accept that anyone else is its equal in the Middle East. At all.
Damn.
At all, under any circumstances. Because Israel's not a nuclear power. That's an important factor I want to mention. Estimated of Israel's stockpile ranges between 90 to 400 nuclear warheads, and the country is believed to possess a nuclear triad delivery option by F-15s, F-16s and Dolphin-class submarines, launching cruise missiles, and by the Jericho series of intermediate to intercontinental range ballistic missiles. Though their policy is that Israel does or does not have nuclear weapons, they've never admitted them. But we think they have between 90 to 400 of them.
So if someone else gets nuclear weapons that they don't agree with, there's going to
absolutely. If Iran gets nukes, there will be a nuclear war in the Middle East. I can almost guarantee it.
Then that's the end of the world, straight off.
The oil price would skyrocket fucking hugely. It would be something like $1,000 a barrel.
I'm not worried about the cost. Just thinking about the nuclear fallout that would come out from that.
It depends on how. Again, when was the last nuclear test? Like the last nuclear test was in 1992. So not necessarily. The last nuclear test by the United States was in 1992. Remember, North Korea's done them quite more recently. Nuclear testing is done. So not necessarily. What would end the world is mass nuclear war. If Pakistan and India had a nuclear war, it would be fucking hugely damaging to the world economy, world society, but humanity would survive. If Iran and Israel had a nuclear war, again, massively damaging to world society, oil price would fucking would fly off the planet. Oil price would fly off the planet.
That's where electric vehicles would take control.
I think you can't. I'm telling you that
we can't. Renovation to do it.
We can't move away from petrol yet. I don't even think it's going to happen.
It would take a nuclear war in the Middle East where the oil prices would skyrocket for the innovation to literally leap forward in order to actually sustain that.
To be fair, they say in 2035 most of Europe and the Western world will have phased out petrol-driven and diesel-driven cars. I don't think that's going to happen by 2035.
I'm saying more hybrid.
We're talking 10 years, Chris.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking more hybrid, more likely, not fully electric.
The UK government has changed the ban on new petrol and diesel cars from 2030 to 2035. It's part of a global effort to reduce carbon emissions and combat climate change. I'm telling you now, unless petrol skyrockets in price to a monstrous level, and what a nuclear war in the Middle East would actually do, I do not envision us giving up petrol. It's like crack. The world is addicted to petrol. It's a horrible thing to say, but the world is absolutely fucking addicted to petrol.
I know for a fact it'll still be around in a century or so. Time.
I mean,
but the use of it will probably reduce.
Oh yeah, no, I hope the use of it will massively reduce in our lifetime. If it does, is an entirely fucking different subject, and that's the scary kind of point of view. So I guess this comes to the end of our 11th podcast, and we would like to thank you very, very kindly. Everyone who's got here, deeply appreciated. Very few people do.
Please like and subscribe.
Please like and subscribe, as always. I'm probably going to add that to the front of our video too. As I genuinely do, as I chop and change things when I do the editing. As always, I am Sean, John, or Yaka, depends on what the fuck you're asking. This is Chris. Assalamu alaikum. It has been a pleasure having you on our 11th podcast.